Throughout modern history, certain days have become solemn reminders of our vulnerability, days of immense tragedy and loss. Terrorism and mass violence have inflicted deep wounds on the global consciousness, leaving scars that last for generations. These events are not just statistics. They represent thousands of individual stories cut short, families torn apart, and communities shattered. This video explores 10 of the deadliest attacks on civilians in recent history. It's important to state upfront that defining terrorism can be complex. Some events on this list are also classified by major organizations as massacres, ethnic violence, or acts of civil conflict. Because casualty counts can differ across sources, the exact rankings may also vary. Our goal is not to sensationalize these tragedies, but to provide a neutral, factual overview. We want to document what happened, remember the victims, and understand the historical impact of these devastating events, in the hope that learning from the past can help us build a more peaceful future. This video contains sensitive content and is intended for educational purposes. 10. Algeria's Black Decade. Our countdown begins at number 10 with an event that became a horrifying symbol of Algeria's Black Decade. On the night of September 22, 1997, the small, quiet town of Bentalha, just south of the capital, Algiers, was thrown into a nightmare. The event is now known as the Bentalha Massacre. At the time, Algeria was caught in a brutal civil war between the government and various Islamist militant groups. Bentalha was in a region known as the Triangle of Death because of the constant violence. On that night, a large group of assailants widely linked to the armed Islamic group, GIA, swarmed the village. They cut the power, cloaking the town in darkness as they moved from house to house. For hours, from late evening until early morning, the attackers carried out a systematic and brutal slaughter. Survivors reported they used a horrific array of weapons, knives, machetes, and guns to murder entire families. The outcome was staggering. While official estimates were initially lower, independent sources and organizations like Amnesty International reported a death toll of over 200, with some estimates climbing as high as 400 civilians killed in a single night. The Bentalha massacre is a brutal testament to the extreme violence civilians faced during the Algerian Civil War, an event so cruel its memory still haunts the nation. 9. The Beslan School Siege. At number 9 is an act of terror that targeted the most vulnerable, children. The Beslan School Siege started on September 1, 2004, in Beslan, North Ossetia, Russia. It was the first day of school, a day of celebration known as the Day of Knowledge. That morning, a group of heavily armed militants from a Chechen separatist group stormed school number 1. They quickly herded over 1,100 people, including 777 children, their parents, and teachers, into the school's gymnasium, which they had rigged with explosives. The hostage-takers demanded the full withdrawal of Russian forces from Chechnya. For 3 agonizing days, the hostages were trapped in horrific conditions, denied food and water in the sweltering, cramped gym. The siege ended in catastrophe on its 3rd day. A series of explosions, whose origins are still debated, tore through the gym, causing the roof to partially collapse. Russian special forces then stormed the building. A chaotic gun battle broke out, with hostages caught in the crossfire. The tragic result was the death of at least 334 people, including 186 children. Many more were wounded. The Beslan School Siege remains one of the most harrowing school attacks in history, a tragedy that shocked the world and left an indelible scar on Russia. 8. The Cinema Rex Fire. Our 8th entry is an event shrouded in the political turmoil of its time. The Cinema Rex Fire. On August 19, 1978, in Abadan, Iran, the Cinema Rex Theatre was packed with hundreds of people watching the film The Deer. What should have been a normal night at the movies turned into a scene of mass death. During the screening, assailants barred the theatre's exit doors before dousing the building with airplane fuel and setting it on fire. With their escape routes blocked, the moviegoers were trapped in the inferno. The fire consumed the building, leading to a catastrophic loss of life. The emergency response was reportedly slow and inadequate, only making the tragedy worse. The aftermath was chaotic. The death toll was immense, with estimates ranging from 377 to over 470 people. Who was responsible became a subject of intense and bitter dispute. The Shah's ruling government blamed religious extremists who opposed Western cultural influences like cinema. In contrast, opponents of the Shah, including the future Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini, blamed the regime's own intelligence agency, SAVAK, accusing them of setting the fire to frame the opposition. While many historians now point toward Islamist militants, the issue remains highly contested and was never fully resolved. The Cinema Rex fire became a pivotal event, fueling public outrage that helped lead to the overthrow of the Iranian monarchy just months later. 7. The Horn of Africa. Number 7 on our list takes us to the Horn of Africa, with an attack so massive it stands as one of the deadliest single bombings in history. On October 14, 2017, a huge truck bomb exploded at a bustling intersection in Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. The city was in its usual afternoon rush. The intersection in the Hoden district was packed with cars, street vendors and pedestrians. It was next to a hotel and surrounded by government buildings and shops. The truck, packed with hundreds of kilograms of military-grade and homemade explosives, was reportedly being chased by security forces when it detonated. The explosion was cataclysmic, creating a massive fireball that incinerated everything nearby. The blast wave leveled numerous buildings, trapping hundreds of people under the rubble. What was left was a scene of utter devastation. The final death toll was confirmed to be at least 587 people, with hundreds more injured. The blast was so intense that some victims were completely vaporized, meaning a truly final count may never be known. Although no group officially claimed responsibility, Somali officials have firmly attributed the attack to Al-Shabaab, an al-Qaeda-linked militant group. The 2017 Mogadishu bombing remains the deadliest terrorist attack in Somalia's history, and a grim reminder of the power of modern explosives in a dense urban area. 6. Iraq War. For number 6, we go to northern Iraq, where one of the most lethal coordinated bombings of the Iraq War was carried out against a small, ancient religious minority. On August 14, 2007, 4 coordinated suicide truck bombs targeted the Yazidi communities in the towns of Qahtaniya and Jazeera, near the city of Sinjar. The Yazidis are a unique religious group with the ancient beliefs, and they have long faced persecution. In the months before the attack, tensions in the region were high. That day, attackers drove 4 separate vehicles, including a fuel tanker packed with an estimated 2 tons of explosives, into the heart of the residential Yazidi towns. The communities were made up of simple mud brick homes which offered no protection. The 4 simultaneous detonations were apocalyptic, leveling entire neighborhoods and burying hundreds of families under the rubble of their own homes. The scale of the carnage was staggering. Hospitals in the remote region were quickly overwhelmed and rescue efforts were crippled by the sheer destruction. 5. Yambi, Democratic Republic of the Congo. At number 5, we look at an event whose human cost is undeniable, but whose classification is complex. In December 2018, a wave of shocking, organised violence swept through Yambi and nearby areas in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The violence, which erupted over just a few days, was rooted in long-standing tensions between the Banunu and Batende communities, reportedly triggered by a dispute over the burial of a Banunu chief on Batende land. But this dispute ignited a pre-planned and highly organised assault. Attackers armed with firearms, machetes and bows descended on several villages. They carried out systematic house-to-house attacks, killing men, women and children and burning down buildings. The speed and coordination suggested a level of planning far beyond a spontaneous riot. The result was a massive slaughter. The United Nations verified that at least 535 people were killed, though local sources report the death toll was much higher, around 890. The attacks also displaced tens of thousands of people. 4. Boko Haram. For our 4th entry, we turn to northeastern Nigeria for one of the most brutal campaigns by the terrorist group Boko Haram. In early January 2015, militants launched a devastating multi-day assault on the town of Baga and its surrounding villages. Boko Haram, whose name translates to Western education is forbidden, had been waging a violent insurgency for years to establish an Islamic caliphate. The attack on Baga began on January 3rd when militants overran a key military base. With the military neutralized, the fighters then turned on the civilian population. For several days, they rampaged through Baga and at least 16 other villages, burning homes and killing residents indiscriminately. Eyewitnesses described streets littered with bodies as smoke from burning buildings filled the sky. The exact death toll from the Baga massacre remains a point of sharp disagreement. The Nigerian government initially reported around 150 deaths. 3. The Camp Spiker Massacre. The third deadliest terrorist attack in modern history is a chilling example of a mass execution carried out with cold precision. The Camp Spiker massacre took place on June 12, 2014 near Tikrit, Iraq. At the time, ISIS was advancing rapidly across northern Iraq. As their fighters closed in on Tikrit, panic broke out at Camp Spiker, an Iraqi Air Force academy. The cadets, who were mostly unarmed new recruits, were allegedly ordered by their superiors to put on civilian clothes and go home. As they left the base, they walked directly into the hands of ISIS militants. The militants captured an estimated 3,000 cadets and began a brutal process of sectarian selection, separating the Shia Muslim cadets from the others. The captured Shia cadets, numbering around 1,700, were then taken to various locations around Tikrit. There, over the course of the day, they were systematically murdered. ISIS documented the massacre extensively, releasing horrific videos and photos showing cadets being forced into shallow trenches and shot en masse. Their bodies were dumped into the Tigris River or buried in unmarked mass graves. The final death toll is estimated to be between 1,095 and 1,700, making it one of the deadliest single acts of terrorism in history and a gruesome symbol of ISIS's sectarian hatred. 2. Israeli-Palestinian conflict number 2 is the deadliest single-day attack in Israel's history, an event that triggered a devastating new chapter in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. On October 7, 2023, Hamas and other militant groups launched a large-scale, multi-pronged surprise attack from the Gaza Strip. The assault began at dawn on a Sabbath and Jewish holiday. It started with a massive barrage of thousands of rockets fired toward Israeli cities, designed to overwhelm the Iron Dome air defense system. Under the cover of the rockets, militants breached the heavily fortified border fence. Using motorcycles, trucks, and paragliders, they infiltrated more than 20 Israeli towns, kibbutzim, and military bases. They went from house to house in communities like Be'eri and Kfar Aza and stormed the Nova Music Festival, killing civilians indiscriminately. The rampage of killing and hostage-taking lasted for hours. The final revised death toll from the attack stands at approximately 1,200 people, the vast majority of whom were civilians. In addition to those killed, the militants abducted more than 240 people, including foreign nationals, and took them back to Gaza as hostages. The scale and brutality of the October 7th attack, which has been called the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, profoundly shocked Israel and the world, and immediately led to a full-scale war in Gaza. 1. The September 11th attacks. We've arrived at number 1, the deadliest terrorist attack in human history. It was an event so seismic it reshaped global politics, led to 2 major wars, and fundamentally changed air travel and security forever. The September 11th attacks. On the morning of Tuesday, September 11, 2001, 19 terrorists from the extremist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial airliners in the United States. The plot was meticulously coordinated and shockingly bold. The hijackers turned the planes into guided missiles aimed at prominent American landmarks. At 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time, American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. The 4th plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was also headed for Washington, D.C., likely targeting the Capitol building or the White House. But passengers and crew on that flight learned of the other attacks through phone calls and heroically fought back. Their struggle caused the plane to crash into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, preventing further loss of life on the ground. The devastation in New York was immense. The fires from the jet fuel weakened the steel structures, causing both 110-story skyscrapers to collapse, burying thousands. The total number of fatalities in the 9/11 attacks was 2,977, not including the 19 hijackers. This included 2,753 people in New York, 184 at the Pentagon, and 40 on Flight 93. The victims came from over 90 countries and included hundreds of first responders who rushed into the towers to save others. The September 11th attacks remain the single most lethal act of terrorism ever recorded. A day of profound tragedy that changed the world forever. Conclusion. The attacks we've recounted are stark reminders of the human cost of terrorism and mass violence. From Algiers to New York, from Beslan to Baga, these events represent moments of immense suffering. While the numbers provide a scale of the devastation, they can't fully capture the individual tragedies. The lives cut short, the futures erased, and the families left to grieve. Remembering these events is more than just a history lesson. It's an act of respect for the victims and a record of the ideologies that drive such violence. By understanding these dark chapters, we can better commit ourselves to the values of peace, tolerance, and human dignity, and hopefully be more united in building a world where such hatred cannot take root. If you found this video informative, please consider subscribing for more fact-based historical content. Sharing the video also helps make sure these events aren't forgotten. Thank you for watching.